This airline CEO is probably one of the craziest in the world.
We have 3 toilets. If I can get rid of the 2 toilets at the back of the planes, I can add 6 extra seats. With 6 extra seats, I can lower everybody's airfare by another 5% all year round.
Did you want to make some passengers stand on planes to fit more people in, a la the tube?
Yes.
That's Michael O'Leary, CEO of Ryanair, and he's about to become insanely wealthy. Back in 2019, Ryanair's board of directors made a deal with O'Leary. If he could double Ryanair's stock price over the next 5 years, he'd get an €100 million bonus. Now, at the time, it seemed insanely ambitious, especially after the industry took a hit during the pandemic. But he's about to do it. Under O'Leary, Ryanair is known for ridiculously cheap flights and has become so successful that it's competing with Delta for the world's most valuable airline title. Ryanair's unique and sometimes extreme cost-cutting measures have made it one of the most controversial airlines in the world.
I love cream cakes.
Here's how Ryanair is beating out other major airlines to keep its prices so ridiculously low. According to Ryanair, the customer isn't always right. Customers are forced into sitting in cramped seats, buying only non-refundable tickets, and paying for water in flight. My producer will pay for that, thanks. But Ryanair's CEO didn't want to stop there. He's floated having customers pay extra for being overweight, using the bathroom, and even
breathing on board if I could.
Okay, that's obviously crazy, but many of these proposals tie back to Ryanair's larger business model.
When we buy a ticket on Ryanair, that basically is the seat and the seatbelt. Pretty much everything else comes at an extra cost.
This means also cutting back on parts of the flying experience that most customers are used to getting for free, like being able to check in at the airport. And if a customer wanted to ask for help or send a complaint, Ryanair has made it purposely pretty difficult, because the airline can even charge you for using their call center, because hiring call staff costs money that Ryanair doesn't want to spend. All of this has given Ryanair a pretty bad rap with customers. Yet, the company doesn't seem to mind. I reached out to Ryanair to participate in this story, but like many of their customers, I didn't get a response.
It recorded a 92% load factor. That's the percentage of seats occupied. You know, it's amazing how an airline has so many people that hate it and yet fly it.
For such a criticized airline, 92% is high. Southwest reported an 80% load factor in 2023, and Frontier reported around the same. In fact, its marketing budget is significantly smaller than other major airlines, roughly a tenth of the size of Southwest's. And despite the generally negative consensus from passengers, many are still loyal to Ryanair and its cheap ticket prices. So much so that it's on track to serve 200 million passengers in 2024, making it the most flown airline in Europe and one day possibly the whole world. Which is crazy, because the company is mainly operating just in Europe. But Ryanair's success isn't just from pinching pennies. It's also quietly copied strategies from other budget airlines to make it one of the most operationally efficient in the business. The airline has some of the fastest aircraft turnaround times in the entire industry, because planes don't make money on the ground. Ryanair's ability to unload passengers and baggage, refuel and clean the plane, do maintenance and safety checks, and reload passengers and baggage in half an hour is lightning fast. For comparison, a global travel data company found that in the United States, United, American, and JetBlue all had average turnaround times of over an hour. But Ryanair wasn't always a speed demon. Back in the late 80s, the company was at best turning around planes in about an hour and 15 minutes. So as the story goes, in the early 90s, O'Leary flew to Dallas and got absolutely wasted with this man, Herb Kelleher, the legendary co-founder and CEO at Southwest who revolutionized turnaround times. Kelleher shared how a decade earlier, Southwest was treating airports like Formula One pit stops to save itself money. Once a plane landed, the entire crew, including pilots, would rush to clean the interior and usher in passengers to grab seats as quickly as possible. In the 80s, Southwest would even start to taxi before everyone was seated, which federal aviation regulations eventually banned because that's just, well, crazy. O'Leary took some of his learnings from Southwest and put his own spin on them, starting as soon as a plane lands. See, Ryanair mainly uses Boeing 737s, so when you deboard the plane, you can locate your nearest exit at either the front or the rear of the aircraft. These Boeing 737s also have air stairs hidden below the front door that Ryanair uses whenever possible, so passengers can exit without having to wait for ground crews to attach the jet bridge. Ryanair even took out its seat back pockets to reduce cleaning time between flights. Ryanair also expedites its boarding process by discouraging customers from bringing carry-on luggage. The company's base-level ticket will only allow you one personal item that has to fit under the seat in front of you. If you want to use space in the overhead bins, you'd have to pay extra. Ryanair only has 2 boarding groups to get people on the plane faster than traditional airlines. People hate it so much that they even made a music video.
3 hours standing in the queue. We left you standing there. The joke's on you.
Once its planes are back in the sky, Ryanair has found ways to optimize its routes to, you guessed it, save even more money. You see, Ryanair is particularly choosy not just how it flies, but where it flies to.
So in the US, we are a single domestic market. Ryanair has taken advantage of the EU single market to cobble together its own pan-European airline with aircraft based in 94 cities.
The company has been able to build up such an extensive network around Europe because it's set up different divisions through 5 country-level airlines. So it doesn't matter if you're a passenger on a Ryanair flight in the UK or flying on one of Ryanair's subsidiary brands in Malta. You'll have the same experience either way.
Now, one thing that's different about Ryanair versus here in the US, Ryanair doesn't sell connecting flight itineraries.
Its routes are designed from point to point so that planes and crews can return to their home base every night.
And that saves Ryanair probably tens of millions of euros, maybe more. If there's bad weather, they don't have to worry about holding a plane for connecting passengers or that one plane may delay an onward journey.
Ryanair also focuses on flying to mostly small and medium-sized airports. Henry says this is mainly for 2 reasons. First, the airline doesn't have to pay higher landing fees that large airports charge. And second, these smaller airports tend to be less congested. Ryanair still flies out of some major European cities, but there's often a big catch. Let's say you wanted to take a Ryanair flight to Frankfurt. Ryanair lists this destination as Frankfurt-Hahn. Passengers will land here, just 75 miles or an hour-and-a-half drive away from central Frankfurt. And this is just one example. There are now third-party companies that will shuttle Ryanair passengers from distant airports to their desired destinations.
And again, it translates into lower fares. But there's some times where Ryanair stretches it.
There have been multiple strikes against Ryanair over complaints of below minimum wage pay and poor working conditions. Workers claim that Ryanair didn't pay them for certain pre- and post-flight work, and even made them buy their water on flights. Ryanair has also been strategic with its hiring practices. It's used Irish work contracts for cabin crew and senior pilots working in other countries, claiming that these employees work in Irish-registered aircraft, not in their actual base countries. And since they're subject to Irish labor laws, that means they could lose access to their own country's public benefits. Ryanair's been able to avoid some labor regulations in many of the countries it flies to, lowering the airline's labor costs because it doesn't have to pay as much for things like Social Security. And critics argue that this makes it easier for the airline to be tight-lipped with its employees and mask low pay and poor work conditions. To O'Leary's credit, Ryanair's cost-cutting strategies have set the airline up to become one of the most profitable in the industry. He's now at the final stretch in getting his bonus. But there are still some challenges ahead. Ryanair will have to make schedule cuts for this summer because Boeing is expected to be short by about 15 to 20 planes that were supposed to be delivered to Ryanair before the end of June. The airline said this will cause a loss of around 5 million passengers.
Ryanair's definitely going to feel some kind of a pinch this summer and likely through the rest of this year until Boeing is able to increase its production.
Other airlines also have to deal with this, but it could affect the stock price and keep O'Leary from getting his bonus this year. Even if O'Leary doesn't get the bonus, the company's stock has still made an impressive climb. And although Ryanair isn't expected to expand to the US anytime soon, you can still see its impacts on the entire industry.
If you take a look at Spirit, Frontier, and Allegiant, the 3 largest budget airlines in the US, all of them have copied Ryanair's a la carte business model.
That's pretty good. It's a nice light cream. Honestly, those protesters had good taste. Cream pie is delicious.